Hello everyone, this is Professor Robert Solis. Welcome to this next video lesson. We're going to be working on the game Blackout, and the way that this game works out is you click any one of these buttons to flip that particular button's color from white to red or from red to white, and you also affect the adjacent buttons that are next to it. So if I clicked this one, say for example, then this guy would flip as well as this guy would flip its color. If I clicked this edge, say for example, then a total of 4 buttons would flip: this one, this one, this one, and this one. And then finally, if I click, say for example, the middle button, then a total of 5 buttons would flip their color or swap their color. This one on the top, 2, 3, 4, and then this one over here. So only adjacent buttons are affected. If I click this guy over here, the diagonal buttons are not affected, only adjacent buttons. Now, we've done this project before, but this time I want to use arrays, because with an array structure, we are going to be able to nice and neatly fit all of these buttons and then refer to them with 4 statements, specifically 2 4 statements, one for the rows, one for the columns, and then change the colors. We're going to also be able to determine if we've won the game by using a for statement, checking if every one of the different colors is equal to this one. Say for example, is this the same as this? Is this the same as this? So forth and so on for every other button. So we have a lot of things that we can do that are to our advantage. But let me discuss some theory first. So let me switch over here. This was the naming convention that we used. So here are the different rows and here are the columns. And so this button over here, we're going to call btn1_1, row 1, column 1. Here's another example. This is btn row 2, column 3, so this will be btn2_3 in terms of the naming structure. I didn't fill out the rest. All right. Now, here is the idea. You know that if you click a button, that button as well as the adjacent buttons are swapped. So if I clicked this button, this one would be swapped, so would this one, so would this one. In fact, check this out. The middle button really represents the optimal choice of which buttons are going to be flipped. If I clicked the center button, the one on the top, below, to the left, and to the right, and the one that I clicked would be swapped. Wouldn't that be great to do that over here? Say, hey, the top, below, to the left, and to the right, and the one that I clicked, those are the buttons that we swap. But that doesn't make any sense right now if I were to click this one, because there is no top button. There is no left button. So what if I did this? Because this idea of, hey, just swap the one above, below, left, and right. It's so nice. It's so concise. Why don't I create some phantom buttons around? So these are my actual game buttons. I'll create some phantom buttons that exist only in memory, but they don't exist in the display. For example, let me do this. Let me create this button over here. And let me take this guy over here, copy, and paste it, and I'll just move it over here and paste it again. So these buttons that I'll leave, like you can see that these have a white background. These, they don't have a background. My intention is to create these phantom buttons, copy and paste, and they only exist in memory. And the advantage of doing it this way is that I can refer to these as follows. So let me copy and paste, and paste, and let me go ahead and paste over here on the upper right hand corner, and paste on the low upper left hand corner. I'll select these guys. So let me select this, this. Let's see here, copy and paste. And let's move that down here. I didn't do exactly what I asked it to do. That's okay. I'll just copy and paste those guys. Just do it simple. That's fine. Copy and paste. So what I'm doing is I'm creating these perimeter phantom buttons. They exist, but they only exist in memory. They don't actually physically exist on your screen, like the other buttons that you drew at design view. For example, here you drew 9 buttons. You created 9 buttons. What I'm doing in memory is I'm putting these phantom buttons around the perimeter, and they exist only in memory. And the reason why I'm doing that is, if I were to click this button over here, then the one above, below, to the left, and to the right would be swapped. And what is the definition of the one above? Well, in this context, it's this phantom button above that swaps. In this context, it's this phantom button that swaps over here. If I were to click this button, say for example, then above, below this phantom button, to the left and to the right, and the one that I clicked would be swapped. So I have a way now of just simply creating a function that says swap above, below, left, and right by creating these phantom buttons. So that's the idea. Well, if that's the case, and let me change the zoom here a little bit so that we're just looking at right there. And this would be row 0, column 0, column 1, 2, 3, and 4. As you can see here, column 0 and column 4, those are the phantom buttons. Over here, row 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. As you can see, row 4 and row 0, those are my phantom buttons as well. Okay. But they allow me to implement this idea of above, below, to the left, and to the right to any of these game buttons. See, optimally, if I click this guy over here, well then this one gets swapped, this one above, below, left, right, and the one in the center. But I can now implement that same idea for all of these outer buttons over here. Above, below, to the left, and to the right, which happens to be a phantom button. For this guy, above, below, to the left, and to the right. Okay. So that's the idea. And then we can use arrays to store these buttons. Okay, so let me go ahead and double click on the reset button just so that I can get into the code area. And since I'm going to be creating an array, I'm going to say const row size as integer. We'll set that to 5. Now, you know that in Visual Basic, you really don't say, see, in all of the programming languages, you would typically give the size of the array as a constant. But in Visual Basic, it doesn't refer to the size of the array. What it does is it refers to the last index. So if the size of the array is 5, the last index would be 1 minus that, which is 4, because you start counting from 0. For example, I have 5 items here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We start at 0. The last index is 4. So even though I'm using that, I better remember to take this value, subtract 1 from it if I'm going to refer to the last index. So in a similar fashion, we'll say const column size as integer, and we'll also set that to 5 as well. Now, from a global perspective, I'm going to create a global array of buttons based on the row size, and I'll say -1, and the column size, -1, as button. So what is this thing? It's a collection of buttons. Now remember, when you're declaring an array in Visual Basic, you give it the last index. Well, if the last index, as you can see here, is 4 for the column, 4 for the row, that's why I took the row size and said -1. I guess what I could have done is I could have said last row index equals 4, last column index equals 4. I could have done that as well. I'm just making sure that you understand if you are going to consider the size of the array, you just got to make sure to subtract 1 from it, because in Visual Basic, two-dimensional arrays, I mean any array really, single-dimensional, two-dimensional arrays, refer to the last index. Okay, and then what I'll do is I'll also create another variable here called moves as an integer, and I'll set that to 0. So I'll say modular or global declarations. Okay, so what we want to do is to create several different functions that we're going to need that will help us with swapping the color of the buttons and checking to see if we've won the game, so forth and so on. So why don't I start off with swap. So I'll just simply go over here to the end sub, hit enter a couple times, and I'll type sub swap. Now, the way that this works out is when you call the swap subroutine, this will take whatever the color of the button is and turn it from red to white or white to red. So what I'm going to do is, by reference, I'm going to send you a button, which I'll call temp button as button. So what are you sending to me? I'm sending you a button. Now I'm sending it by reference, which means you are getting the original button that I'm sending to you. The original button that I give to you, if it's red, I want you to change it to white. If it's white, I want you to change it to red. So we can do that by saying if the temp buttons back color dot equals color dot red. If that is the case, then I want you to change that temp color, that original button that I gave to you, change the back color to color.white. Now, what if that's not the case? Well, then I'll have an else statement over here that says change the temp buttons back color to color.red. So no matter what you send to me, I'm going to be swapping its color from red to white or from white to red. All right. Another function that we're going to have to take into consideration is if I've won the game. And I have won the game if all of the buttons are the same color. So let's work on that sub. Hit enter a couple times at the very bottom here before the end class. And we'll say sub check for win. Now remember, all of these buttons are going to be placed inside of an array. So these buttons and the phantom buttons that I'm going to be creating in just a moment, those are going to be placed inside of an array. If they are inside of an array, then I can refer to each of those buttons with this row-column approach. For example, if I'm interested in this button over here, well, that is at row 3 and column 4. If I'm interested in this button right here, that is at row 3 and column 2. Right? So I can use the row and the column to refer to each of the different buttons. All right, so first let me create a row variable as integer. I'll set that to 1. I'm going to create a column variable as integer. I will also set that to 1. And then I'll create a Boolean same color as Boolean. Set that to true. This is going to be a flag, and the flag is only going to be activated if all of the buttons are the same color. If all of them are the same color, then I've won. Okay, so I need to go through every single one of these buttons to see if they're the same. Now, let me go back to my diagram. I don't care about these outer phantom buttons. They just exist so that I can use this swap the top, below, left, right, and the one that I click perspective or algorithm that I'll be using. Now, the only buttons that I really am concerned with are these inner 9 game buttons. If this one is the same as this one, which if that one is the same as this one, if all of these are the same color, then I've won the game. I don't care if they're red, I don't care if they're white. I just have to check these inner 9. So I think you can see over here that starting at column 1, starting at row 1, if I go row 1, row 2, and row 3, if I check all those, then I've won the game. So what I'll do is I'll create a for statement for row equals from row 1 to, now I want to consider everything up to this guy over here, right? So from column 1, column 2, and column 3. Well, that means I'm going to do row size minus 2 because row size is 5, as you can see here, right? It's 5. 5 minus 2 is 3, so this will give me from 1 to 3. So I'm considering row 1, 2, and 3. This row, this row, and this row. Well, in a similar fashion, I got to consider all the columns. So for column 1 to column size, minus 2. Okay, there's that constant that I created, which is worth 5. So from column 1 to 5 minus 2, so 1 to 3. Column 1, column 2, column 3, to deal with these 3 actual columns for these actual buttons. All right. Now, how about this? Let's compare everything to button 1_1. So if this guy is the same as this, and if this guy is the same as this, and if this guy is the same as this, and so forth and so on. So in other words, I pick this one and say, check all the others relative to that one. If they're all the same, then you've won the game. So if game button 1_1, that's the button on the bottom left-hand corner. If that back color equals the back color of the game button, so we'll say game buttons, this is the array, row, column, dot, back color. Then, go over here. Change the zoom to 190. Good, so that way the then appears over here. All right, what I'm saying is this. We start off with 1, 1. So at first, this is redundant. Is this button the same as the same button's color? Yes, it is. Then I'll say, is this button the same back color as this? Then is this back color of this particular button the same as this button? So forth and so on. So that's what this thing is going to do. Now, if that's the same color, then we'll say Boolean, same color. We'll make this switch that I've created, this Boolean flag, we'll make that true. So far, this is the same as this, that's true. This is the same as this, that's true. This is the same as this, that's true. What if this one were red? Right? What if I had a situation like this, where the back color, let's see, can I get back color over here? Yeah. So we'll say color, and we'll change that to red. So yeah, these two are white, these two are white, these two are white. Uh-oh, these two are not white. This is white, this is red. So why continue on checking if the other colors are the same? I haven't won yet. I've got one discrepancy here. That's not white, or they're all not red. So there's no need to continue. So what we'll do is we'll say else, Boolean, same color is false, and exit the for statement. There's no need for you to keep on looping through this, because there's one cell that is not the same as that lower left-hand corner cell, or lower left-hand corner button, which is btn 1_1. This exit for will exit out of this inner for statement. Well, I've also got to exit out of this outer for statement as well. So what I'll do is I'll have an if statement over here. If the Boolean, same color, is false, then exit for. So what this thing does is it says, okay, let me start over here. If this exit for says, since we are not the same color, all the buttons are not the same color, or at least one of them is not, we are going to exit out of this for statement. If that flag has been set to false, well, now we're going to exit out of this outer for statement. There's no need to continue. This would be like a interesting case. What if this button over here? Okay, so all these are white except for this one. So I compare this to itself, that's white. I compare this to over here. All right, this is white, this is red. Why go on checking this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one? Why go on checking? You didn't win. And so that's the whole purpose of these exit for statements. They allow you to get out of continuing to check when you know that you haven't won the game. So that is the definition of that is the definition of check for win. Are all of them the same color? Because if they are, then we've won the game. If they are not, then we just simply exit out. We're done. Okay. Let's see here. So I've got swap, I've got that. Let's work on this one function called button array click. So hit enter a couple of times. So we're at the bottom over here, just before the end class. And the name of this sub is going to be btn array click. All right, now type exactly what I type. So by val, and also make sure you consider the capitalization. Sender as system dot object comma, again by val, e as system dot event arguments, or args, and then press enter. All right. So let me explain what this particular sub does. And I guess the best way for me to explain it is to show you what happens when I double click on the reset button. You know that when you double click on a button, it takes you to a particular sub, right? So let's see what happens. Go back over here and double click on reset, and notice that it takes me to this btn reset underscore click handler, right? So this is how this thing is going to be handled. Well, what I want to do is I want to make it so that I create a handler. Notice this, it's a sender as object, e as event arguments. When I click this button, when it's being executed, it'll generate or execute the code inside of this particular sub. What I want is for all of these 9 game buttons to be handled by one sub. I don't want to double click. I'm going to double click on purpose to make a mistake, and then I'm going to clear it. So don't do this. If I double click, see how it takes me to the btn1 underscore 1. If I double click, see how it takes me to the btn1 underscore 2. See, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have all these separate subs that take care of these buttons. I want all of these buttons to be handled by one sub, which means if that's the case, I'm going to have to know, hey, who are you? Okay, you called this one sub, so did you, all of you are calling the same sub, but I need to know who you are, because then I know how to handle you. Oh, you are btn1 underscore 1. You are btn2 underscore 3, right? So if all of these are going to call upon the same sub, I need to know who you are, then I know how to handle you. Because, see, for you, top, bottom, left, right, and then the one in the middle, that's how I define you. For you, top with the phantom button, bottom, left, right is the phantom button, and then the one that I actually clicked. See, I got to know who you are to define top, bottom, left, and right. Okay. So we're going to have just one handler for that. Okay, so let me go back over here to what I had you click. And so this is what we're going to do. First of all, we're going to say dim temp string as string, dim row as integer, dim column as integer. Now, the temp string is going to be whoever the sender is. Is the sender btn1 underscore 1? Is the sender btn2 underscore 3? Whoever the sender is, that's who I want to know. Who are you? But specifically, I want to know your name, N-A-M-E. Make sure you type it in capital N. So I'm going to put a comment over here for you. The sender name might be btn1 underscore 1. Or any of those other buttons that I have, right? So this sub receives the sender information. See, the sender could be any one of these guys, because I want all of these to refer to one particular handler, one particular sub. So I know now who the sender is. It's btn whatever. Well, give me your name. Because what I intend on doing is I intend on stripping this off, which is the what? Isn't that the row? I intend on stripping this off. What is that? Isn't that the column? So if you give me the name of the button that was sending, then I know this and I know this. That's the row and the column. If I extract this, I've got the row. of the button. If I extract this, I've got the column of the button. And in previous lectures, we talked about Subscript for strings. What Subscript does is it says, of this huge string that you're giving to me, I just want this. That's at position 0, 1, 2. At position 3, grab one character. At position 5, grab one character. Well, by doing that, now I've got the row in the column. If I've got the row in the column, I can use that to specifically change buttons, such as above, below, to the left, and to the right, because I know which one was actually clicked, which one was actually sent. That's the sender information. All right, so why don't I do that? Row is going to be temp string. Let's use the substring, and starting at position 3, grab one character. For the column, temp string, substring. At position 5, grab one character. Now I have this row value and I have this column value. Now that I have that, I know what to swap. And so I'm going to swap from this array, game button. First, I'll deal with this row, column. Put a comment. This will change the button, the color of the clicked button. So for example, back over here, let's say that I clicked this one right here. Well, this statement is going to swap the color of that button. So if it's red, it's going to go to white. And don't we want to swap the one above it? So that means this. Swap the game button. Watch this. Row plus one column. This will change the north button, or the button on the top. Why? Because if this right here, go back to my diagram, and let's say that I move this over here. Okay, so that button in the middle, that's at row 2, column 2, right? Well, isn't the definition of above this guy right here, which is row 3? So take that number plus 1, that gives me 3. So the definition of north, or the definition of above, in this case, is 1 plus. The definition of south would be 1 minus. 2 minus 1 is 1. The definition of left would be whatever this is, 2 minus 1. Oh, there we go, that's 1. Or the definition of right would be this, 2 plus 1, 3. So now I know which one's the top, bottom, left, and right. So this guy over here represents the north. And I think what I'll do is I'll just take this over here, copy and paste it, and then modify it. For example, over here, I'll say minus 1. And this is going to change the south button. This one over here, I'll say plus 1. And this will change the east button. And then I'll just copy and paste this and say minus. And then I'll change the west button. Because I have this naming convention of btn, whatever the row is, underscore, whatever the column is, I take advantage of that, knowing that if I am able to obtain the name of a button, I can get the row, I can get the column by stripping that out with the substring. Now that I've got the row number and the column number, I know which buttons to swap. If you gave me this button, this is the definition above. The below button is a phantom button. To the left, that's a phantom button. And over here to the right, that's a real button that's going to be swapped as well, plus the one that was clicked. Right? These 5 statements take care of swapping above, below, left, and right, and the one that was actually clicked. So that's the beauty of this particular approach. The next thing to do is the moves counter needs to be incremented because a clicking of a button actually took place. So we'll take moves and we'll increment it by 1. So increment the moves counter And I also want to make sure to display it here, right, on this label. So we'll say lbl moves.text is going to be convert.toString, whatever the moves counter is. Finally, the next thing to do is for every single button click, we need to check if we've won the game. Because if we have won the game, then we need to disable the buttons. So we'll do this. We'll say check for win, which is a function that we just created. Okay. That's all we need to do for this handler, is to make sure that we swap all the buttons and increase the move counter, check for win. Now what I'd like to do is to have you move your cursor over here after end sub for this previous sub and also before end class. And let's create another sub called game setup. Now the way that game setup works out is like this. Anytime we start the program, let's randomize the color of the buttons. Let's change the moves counter to 0. And there are only 2 times that I need to set up the game. One time will be when I click the reset button. Another time will be when I actually start the game. Well, both of them had to set up the game. Randomize these buttons, change this to 0. Okay. All right, so let's do that. First, I'm going to have to create a random number generator. And so you're familiar with integers. A single is just, as you can see here, represents a single precision floating point number. You know what a double is, right? So you have floats, you have doubles, singles, just a little bit smaller than a double. I'm going to have a row as integer. I'm going to have a column as integer. I'm going to type randomize. And as you can see over here, this is going to initialize the random number generator. And I'm going to change the moves counter to 0. Because remember, we're setting up the game. So if you're setting up the game, the moves had better be changed to 0. Well, if that's the case, then I might as well say lbl moves.text is going to be convert toString, whatever the value of moves is, which in this case is 0. All right. Well, now I'm ready to randomize all of the buttons. So why don't I do this? Let's take a look at this button and randomize it. Let's take a look at this button and randomize it, and so forth and so on. We'll take a look at each of these buttons, and I'll say generate a random number, and kind of like flipping a coin, right? If it's heads, make it red. If it's tails, make it white. But obviously, I don't have heads and tails. I'm dealing with numbers. So maybe I could say something like, okay, of the numbers that you're going to generate 0, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9. So of all those numbers, if the number that you generated is greater than or equal to 0.5, then you'll make the button color red. But if it's not, we'll make it white. Right? So if you have this range of numbers from 0 to 1, if I cut it in half, if the number's in this range, it's white. Otherwise, it's red. Something like that. So that's a for statement. For row equals 0. Actually, I don't even have to do 0 because I'm dealing with the actual buttons on the game grid, so that's really 1. If I go back over here, see? Row 1 are these actual buttons up to row 3. Column 1 up to column 3. I don't have to deal with these phantom buttons. I guess if you wanted to, you could change them. It's not going to affect anything. So to row size -2 for column equals 1 to column size -2. Remember, this is the number 5. 5 minus 2 is 3. So 1 to 3 for the column, and then, of course, 1 to 3 for the row. Let me generate a random number. So this is going to generate a random number. Now, let's make sure to enable all of the buttons that I randomize. So game buttons, specifically for that particular row, for that particular column, dot enabled, I'm going to set that to true. Okay, so that's the first thing we want to do. If you're setting up the game, make sure that all the buttons are enabled. Next, if that random number that you just generated, so if my random, if that is greater than or equal to 0.5, then that particular button for that row and that column, the back color, we'll set that to red. Else, if that was not the case, the random number that you generated, if it's not greater than or equal to 5, then the game buttons, row.column, I said game buttons, game button, back color, we'll set that to color.white. All right, so this is sweet. Because everything is located inside of an array, this is an array of buttons, all I have to do is go through these buttons and then randomize, create a new random number, enable the button. If that random number is greater than or equal to 5, make it red, 0.5 that is. If it's not, then make it white. And I do that for every single button for all of the columns and all of the rows of buttons that I have. So we're going to be doing this. We're going to check this one, then this, and every single button will be enabled, and it will be randomized in terms of its color. All right, now, one thing that I have not done is I have not assigned these buttons to the array. What I want to do is something like this. See, I have the array, and let's say that I have this button over here. And let me say that this is btn1_1. I need to put this into the array, like this. And if I had another button, let me make a couple buttons to illustrate the point. Okay, so let's say I have these buttons. Let me put this button into this array element. Let me put this button into this array element, and so forth and so on. I need to take those 9 buttons and put them into the array. I haven't done that yet. I've created an array of buttons, but it doesn't have btn1 in this slot. btn1_2, btn1_3. Those buttons are not in there yet. That's what I need to do. So what I'm going to have you do is, after you save all, go back over here to the design view and double click on the form so that you can go into the form load sub. So my mouse pointer is over here. Double click the form. And that takes you to form1.load or form1_load. All right, let me create 2 constants. Row size. Actually, didn't I create that already? Globally? Yeah, I did, so I don't have to do that. This is redundant. I don't have to create those row size and column size because they already exist. What I do is I just have to create variables. Row as integer, column as integer. All right, into the game button array, specifically into the 1,1 location within this 2-dimensional array, place this button. So let me show you graphically what has happened. Let me unzoom here. Let's say that I have these buttons over here. Okay, and I'll take these 3 buttons and I'll copy and paste. And I'll paste again. Okay, so here is what I see in my game, right? These buttons right here, that's what this is. These are the physical buttons on the game grid. But I need to place these into a 2-dimensional array so that I can refer to them later on with 4 statements. So what I just did right now is I took this button and I moved it into the array. That's what this statement does right here. It took that button, which was over here, and it put it into that location in the array 1,1. And as you can see over here, this is row 1, column 1. We've just done this. I need to do the same thing with all of these. I need to move this button into this array location, which is 1, 2. This one's 1, 3, and so forth and so on. Once I've moved all of these into the array, now I can use the for statement and then have a counter to deal with every single row, every single column to refer to each of those buttons. So that's what I need to do. So over here, why don't I just do this? I'm going to copy and paste this. And I'll just do this. Whoops, sorry. Enter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And maybe I should space these so that you can see them in groups, and then I'll get rid of those spaces. So all I did was just a bunch of copying and pasting. And the reason why is because I need to deal with row 1, row 2, row 3. So over here on the bottom, you see the INS button. That means you are in insert mode. I'm now going to activate overwrite mode by double-clicking this. Now it says OVR. And so if I place my cursor over here, I'm going to change those to 2, 2, 2, and then these over here to 3, 3, 3. Now, this should be column 1, column 2, column 3, column 1, column 2, column 3, and then same thing over here, column 1, column 2, and then column 3. I'm also going to have to change the buttons, so this is 1, this will be 2, this will be 3. This is going to be row 2, 2, 2. This is going to be row 3, 3, 3. And then, of course, I need to change the columns to 2 and 3, and the columns to 2 and 3. Once you're finished with that, double-click this OVR button to go back into the insert mode. Let me just double-check my work. So game button 1 underscore 1, 2, 3. Yep, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 1, 3, 2, 3, 3. Same thing for the buttons. You see 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 with 1, 2, and 3. Yep, that works. Now I can go ahead and get rid of the space. You don't have to. Maybe you're thinking just keep them spaced like that. That's fine. So you've done this process of taking all those buttons that were over here and you have placed them inside of an array. Well, the next thing that we need to do is to instantiate the phantom buttons. You've created an array of buttons. Here it is. Go back to the top over here. You've created an array of buttons. So I need to actually put buttons into that array of buttons. I need to instantiate them. And so this is how you're going to do that. So game buttons 0, 0 is going to be a new button. All right. This does the following. Notice over here that 0, 0, that's this location right here. This is an array that can hold buttons, but do you see how there is not a button inside of here? So I need to create a new button and put it into this 0, 0 location. That's what we've just done right here. I also need to create a new button and put it into here, and here, and here, and here. And how about this? For the next row, I need to put a new button here at column 0 and also at column 4, and so forth and so on all the way up. Okay. So I'll just take this guy, copy, and paste it. So let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 11. So how many times was that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Is that right? Let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Yep, those are all the outer buttons. So I just copied and pasted that 16 times. I'm going to go back into this overwrite mode. And so this will be for 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. For the next row, which is row 1 and row 1, this will be 1, 0 and also 1, 4. Let me just make sure you understand this. 1, 0, that's this guy over here. 1, 4, that's this guy over here. We'll have to do the same thing for 2, 0, 2, 4, 3, 0, 3, 4. So 2, 0, and also 2, 4, 3, 0, and also 3, 4. Now for this row, that's going to be column 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So all of these down here should be for row 4. So I changed all those to 4. And then this will be for column 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let me get out of this overwrite mode by double-clicking OVR and changing that back into insert mode. So what this does is it instantiates and puts actual buttons inside of those array storage items. Okay? All right, now the next thing that I need to do is to make sure that those buttons, those inner 9 buttons, all refer to the same sub. I already demonstrated that if you double-click a button, it takes you to a particular sub. If you double-click another button, it takes you to another particular sub. I don't want that. I want all of these buttons to go to one particular sub so that I know how to handle it. Well, didn't we create that? That was this guy over here, not the game setup. Where is he? Yeah, this guy over here. btn array click. See, I want all of the buttons, all those 9 buttons, to go here, not to their own separate subs. So I'll do this. Here, for every single one of those buttons in this row, starting from 1 to row size -2, for every single one of those buttons in this column, from 1 to column size -2, we are going to wire this button's click event to a common click subroutine. How do I do that? Type in add handler. Okay, so what is the button that you're referring to? Well, that's going to be the button within this array for this given row, for this given column, dot click. Where do I want you to go? Okay, comma, space, address of, and then space, me dot btn array click. Enter. So this is the code that you would type to say, yeah, for this particular button, for your click event, go here. When you are clicked, go here. So now I've got every single one of these buttons. This is an array of buttons, specifically these 9 right here, right? Because I'm going from 1 to 5. I'm sorry, 1 to 3 and 1 to 3 for the column. So here's 1, 2, 3. Here's 1, 2, 3. It's those red buttons right there. All of these buttons are going to go to this event, or to this sub, I should say, which handles changing the color randomly, or changing the color of the button from red to white, white to red. All right, so remember, we are inside of this form load event. So finally, the last thing to do is to call the game setup procedure. And the way that I'm going to do that is I have a function called game setup. Okay, so now I've taken care of the handler. I have the game setup already figured out. I have created the btn array click sub that is going to be called upon by every one of those buttons that I click. I don't think I've taken care of the reset click button yet. So let me go back over here and double click on reset. And all that we're going to do here is just simply call game setup. We already have a function that takes care of that. And then let's see here. Did I take care of the check for win? I think I did. Let's see here. I'll go back over here. Actually, let me just go down here. Game setup. Here's the form load. Oh, it's up here. Oh, yes, check for win. And, okay, yeah, so if I have, so if I am not going to win, then there's no need for me to continue, so I already talked about this exit sub. I don't think what I did do is to consider what will you do if you actually won the game. If you won the game, then freeze all these buttons, or in other words, disable them. Because you don't want to continue. You want to be able to click the reset button to then continue from this point onward. So here's what I'll have you do. Hit enter a couple of times. This is in the check for win sub. So locate that. And within that check for win sub, let me go down over here. So after the second next and before end sub, we're going to say if the Boolean, same color, is true, so they're all the same color, then for that particular row, from 1 to whatever the row size is, -2, and then for that particular column, from 1 to column size, -2, that particular game button for that row and that column, the enabled property is going to be set to false. You are not enabled anymore. Disable all of those buttons. So that's really what this thing does. In other words, i.e., that is, disable the button. We're setting the enabled button property to false. You are going to disable all of the buttons because you've won. They are either all white or all red. So all those game buttons need to be disabled. I think that's everything. Let's see what happens. Run the code. Okay. Wow, look at that. It randomized everything. Let me stop it, try it again. There's a different pattern. Good. So it looks like we are randomizing all of those buttons when we first started. How about this? Let me click reset. Okay, so I'm trying to see. This one hasn't changed here. Let me keep doing. Good, it changed. Okay, so I'm going to look at all these buttons and making sure that all of them should change. Now, again, this is supposed to happen randomly. So it looks like all of them are changing. Good. All right. So now let me try to solve the puzzle and see if I can freeze everything after I win. Here's a good example. So if I click this guy over here, this will change. This will change to red, and this one will change to red, and I should have won the game. Let's see what happens. Okay, so now I'm going to try clicking it. Perfect. All these buttons are disabled. It took me one move, and now I'm going to click reset. Oh, good, a random pattern. So let me try to win this game. So if I click this, the moves counter increased by 1. If I click this, the moves counter increased by 1. That's good, so the moves counter is working. Let me now solve this puzzle. So I'm going to click this, and that's going to solve it because the top, bottom, left, right, and the one in the middle are going to turn to red. All right, so let me try it again. Perfect. None of them work because you won the game. It took me 7 moves. Let me click reset, and I can keep on clicking reset until I get a pattern that I like. Okay, so it looks like it works. So let's see what happens here. See if I can solve this one. Here we go. And let's see here. This one's taking me a little longer here. Here we go. So I'm about to solve it. Good. Good. None of the buttons are activated, but when I click reset, it changes everything to 0, and again I have activated buttons and a reset pattern. And that's it. So this is Professor Robert Solis. I hope this video lesson was helpful. Have a good day. See you next time.